Welcome to the roller coaster of midlife. I'm your host, Lucy Q. Now, each of us carries a voice inside. Often it's critical, and it can hold us back from our true potential. It questions, it doubts, and sometimes overpowers our every step. Today, we're going to explore the realm of our inner critic, seeking not just to understand, but to transform its influence on our lives. Joining me today is Nomi Bachar, who has dedicated 3 decades to the art and science of human potential. Author, keynote speaker, and founder of the White Cedar Institute for Expanded Living, she's been a nurturing transformation guide for countless individuals and organizations worldwide. Through her Gates of Power program and acclaimed writing, she's created blueprints to our optimal selves, teaching us to harness the inner critic and use it to our advantage. Welcome, Nomi.
I'm so happy to be here. I actually just had a session with a client who was crying on the phone saying, this voice is just shattering me. She's a singer, she's a cantor. It's devastating me. And we were talking about it. So I'd like to explain briefly what is going on inside of us. There are 3 parts of us inside of us. And that doesn't mean that we are multiple personality or anything like that. It's normal. Everybody has those 3 parts, and I'm calling them the 3 aspects of the self. So who are they? You have your emotional self, where all your emotions live, all your emotional experiences, all the emotionality that you ever encountered in your life live there. That part of you is also tremendously creative, vulnerable, could potentially be very joyful, very loving, very compassionate, childlike, soft, entertaining, fun, but also very wounded. That's our emotional self. Then we have our defensive self. Now, who is that? You can think about it as the twin sister or the twin brother of the emotional self. This is a part of you that develops around age of 5, 6. When the bruising in the emotional starts happening, the defensive self, which is a survival self, kicks in. It's there all the time, but it kicks into gear and it starts devising ways of protecting the emotional self. So you can think about them. Let's think about them as twin sisters or twin brothers, but let me use twin sisters. It's that twin sister, the defensive survival self, is going to try to do everything in its power to protect the emotional self from further bruising. So it can take the shape of a pleaser, a caretaker, an exceller, a trying to be perfect person. Maybe some of us become totally internalized and shut down and isolator. Some of us become aggressors, controllers, manipulators. Some become charmers, the life of the party, the glittering socialite, and so on. So there are a lot of different ways that we structure, different people structure their defensive self differently. And I can't go into all of that, but I think the idea is clear. Now, what happens is that it starts cloaking the emotional self out of this overbearing protection and suffocating it in a way, it's like I'm keeping you safe. Just stay in the box type of thing. And the criticalness is part of that protective tool. And I'll explain that in a minute. There is a third part to us, and that is our expanded self. Now, who's that? That is a drop of cosmic love and wisdom and consciousness living inside of us. Drop of God, if you want to call it, living inside of you. It's your wisdom self. Now, most people are aware of it. They maybe meet that part of themselves when they pray or when they meditate or when they have to talk to a friend and give them compassionate advice. People feel that. But none of us know how to utilize this expanded self to coach, to heal, to nurture, to support the two other little selves. I'm saying little selves because they are more primal and they're more young-ish, human-ish selves that need a lot of parenting. That people don't know how to do that. And this Gates of Power, this is one very important tool that we use in the training to train the expanded self to be the best parent, to be the healer, to be the best friend, to be the coach, to be the therapist to these two little ones. Now, question is, why is the defensive so critical? Well, you know that if you criticize yourself first, you protect yourself from other people criticizing you. So it's a protective tool, but it's a horrible protective tool because it's cutting. It's devastating. But that little one is doing her best. She doesn't know she's not a healer. She is a primal, strategic survival part of us.
Nomi, is that emotional component of us? Is that what is also commonly called the inner child?
Yes, and it's a little larger than that because it also contains all past lives emotions.
Right.
So I'm not going to go into that, but we can say inner child.
All that ancestral trauma and that all still lives there.
There's a lot there. Yes. And they're both inner children. Defensive can be very domineering and sometimes cutting and cruel, or be very addictive and so on, but it's a child.
And it's essentially, as you said, it's essentially there to protect that emotional self from being wounded and hurt and traumatized. And
exactly.
although it limits and it stops us from doing things, there are also situations where it is actually protecting us.
Right. I'm going to give my own example. Okay, I grew up in Israel, and suffered some physical abuse at home. And so it's a place of wars, and I was in the army and people dying around you, whatever. So my defensive self was tremendously fierce, so fierce that it became like this crazy samurai, chops everybody's heads off. So I had to contend with her. I'm saying she because I relate to her as she. I also had to, in my defensive, be exceller and achiever. So cut everybody's heads off if they dare to do anything nasty, and be exceller and achiever. I mean, what a life, right? Not achieved a lot, but this is not a way to live. So I had to work with her closely for many years, and to slowly impart on her that it's good to be fierce, but we don't need to be so unrelaxed about it. And I remember years ago when I started doing this training with myself, I said, you have to look at a martial art master. Are they chopping everybody's heads off? Are they nervous? Are they walking around very reactive? No. They're very grounded. They're very calm, but they're very powerful. And when they need to do something, they do something, but they come from very grounded, calm, flowing place. So that's how I want you to be. And slowly, slowly, I trained her to be that.
But it's a process. It's a process. It's not.
And her fierceness is good. I always say, honey, you're good. Just calm, relax. No need to react to everything. It's okay. And about the excelling and the achieving, let's just do it for fun. And so slowly, slowly, she's become an asset. She watches over us, but in a very calm way, which is good. And my emotional is doing her thing.
But until you actually acknowledge and understand that these three aspects of self exist, that's when you see people that are, they can get themselves in really bad situations. They're creating a mess. They're not happy. They're stuck.
Exactly.
But in my experience, once you understand that there's a whole lot more going on below the surface in, what makes up the human being that is here on this planet right now, once you understand the different aspects, that awareness is almost like the first step into healing everything back, into understanding who the emotional self is, who the defensive self is. And then, as you said, taking that next step and becoming that expanded self, that parent, and then parenting the other two aspects so that you actually get to a higher version of yourself, don't you?
Of course. What happens is, and it's a very particular training, and to learn how to do the inner dialogues and to all of that. But once that begins to happen, these two slowly relax. They begin to heal. They begin to normalize. And imagine your little inner team. You're holding their hands, and you start all walking together your life path. And eventually, they become energetically just beautiful colors. You can think of maybe pinkish for the emotional and bluish for your defensive, and gold for, they start melting together into a unified place where your soul is more and more the expanded with a little bit of colors, a little bit of your human colors in there, like a flame. You can imagine a flame, right?
Right.
And that's where enlightenment is. But there's a road to
There's a
get.
load and there's a road and it's longer for others. Some people have a lot longer journey on that road than others, but
Yes,
you
but
know, as you,
everybody has a defensive self. And a
yes,
lot of people have critical defensive self
yes,
as a protective measure, which is, as we said, not protective. But illusionary is if I beat my sister up and tell her how she should do more or different or this or that, she's going to get better. We're going to get better. It's warped logic, but that's
the way our brain is working.
That's the way it's working.
And I've also found that, once you understand this for yourself, you have more understanding and compassion to people that are not yet there. You can recognize it in them. And that's where that loving nature can come outside, because you can see why people are the way that they are, and you can empathize with where they are, and you can also remember, hey, I used to be there too.
Right. Yes. So the inner honesty about these parts of ourselves that's the first step.
The
who
inner
are
honesty.
inside, the honesty, the inner honesty, the being able to look and see and to begin to invite the expanded self to come and be present in the space, not somewhere in meditation or prayer or here and there. When I am in nature for a minute, I felt my expanded self. No, you've got to invite it to your daily life, hour by hour, I would say, and have it become involved.
Well, we have to choose, and that comes down to, we each have the power to live our own life, and we have to choose how we're going to show up in every situation that we're presented with. And we have to choose, because ultimately, once you understand your three aspects, you're choosing whether or not you're letting that defensive self or that emotional self come forward. And that happens when we get triggered. If you're not in control, one of those pops up, right?
Right. That's why you need to create that presence, that dialogue with them. We actually do dialogues out loud.
And what would a dialogue look like then?
Well, let's give you the example of my client of this morning. She is singing. She's about to sing this, Rosh Hashanah now, and the Jewish holidays, and she's a cantor. So she's in a rehearsal, and her defensive is going like, you stink, your voice is bad, all these negative stuff coming, and she's in the middle of rehearsal. And her emotion is going like, oh my God, I'm failing. Everybody is, how am I going to show up here? She said, I had my expanded step in, and I had this inner dialogue while I was singing. She was saying to her defensive, honey, calm down. It's not so bad. We're doing pretty good. And you being so cutting is not helping. So breathe. Let's keep moving. We're here. We need to keep moving. So relax. It's a rehearsal. Let's keep moving. That's the main thing right now. And to her emotional, and that took her a minute, she said, less than a minute. It's an inside. It's to her emotional. She said, you can do it, honey. You can do it. You're doing it. It's okay. Let's keep. And she said she saved the rehearsal. She felt a lot better. But the point is, you have to create that relationship. And that's where the work is. So
And you have to have that awareness, for me, just to share an example as well. I'm doing the final edits on a book. And I was going through some of the grammar that I had to fix. And in school, I sucked in English class. I went to French immersion. So even though English was my first language, I never actually learned proper English because I was in French school. So my grammar isn't the best, and that's okay. I don't care if there's enough AI out there to help me. So I was doing these edits and I was going through them, and I had that for an instant. I had that, this is crap. What are you doing?
right.
It came up.
Right.
And it's, we all have it. No matter where we are in life, you're always going to find, there's always going to be an opportunity for that inner critic to pop up. And immediately I just said, I'm like, no. Okay, so the grammar may not be perfect. So your writing skills might not be perfect, but you have such a beautiful message to share. And this is your best way to share it. And then you have to step back and be okay, because you know what? I've yet to meet a perfect person.
Right. Right. The thing is that when you heal, and that's the deep work, when you heal the core wound in the emotional, your defensive is going to relax, just energetically, because it's doing that as long as you are hurting inside on some level, and there's insecurity on some level, and they're not healed. The defensive is knee-jerk reaction to that. So it's in the relationship with these two, and it's in the healing of the core wound.
Well, yeah, and how I see it is, if you're healing those core wounds, you're essentially becoming emotionally stronger.
Right.
And if you're emotionally stronger,
Right.
then the defensive self
Doesn't need
it doesn't need to protect you, because you're like, hey, I got this. I'm good. I'm cool.
Right. It feels it. Because they're very connected energetically. So the moment the emotional is getting stronger, the defensive begins to relax. It still has, like an addict, habits, bad habits. So you still have to go like, hey, look at what you're doing. I don't think we need this. You still need to fine tune and work with her. I'm saying her, it could be him, but it's much easier because she senses that the other one is okay. She's in a better place. Does that make sense?
Definitely. But in my, also in my experience, is that each time we step out of our comfort zone, there's that opportunity for that defensive self to bubble up again, because you're in new territory.
Yes.
And you feel, you're in strange surroundings. So the defensive side is still going to jump up and go, oh, wait a second.
Right.
I have to protect you. And then you have to go through a little bit more work. It's not like this is one and done. This is a continuous
No, it's
process.
continuous. It's continuous. But what you find is that they slowly shift. They slowly move into different places inside of themselves. So you want to create the relationship and really treat those parts as little beings inside of yourself, not some intellectual idea, but they're energetically little beings with their world and their feelings and their beliefs and all of that. Yes.
Yeah, because you said the defensive side is formed at about age 6, but your emotional self is essentially formed from the moment you're conceived until you absorb everything going
Oh,
on
yeah,
around you.
yeah. The emotional is there. And sometimes the defensive starts. I mean, if you are living in a household with a lot of violence, or you're a child of migrants, who knows? I mean, it might start, the defensive starts much earlier.
Yes.
Whenever the time that you need to protect, it's going to kick in, and then it's going to start formulating itself. And most people have about three major, like you could be an exceller, achiever, and a dominator, or you could be an exceller, achiever, and a caretaker, or you could be a jokester, pleaser, and isolator. I mean, colors, different colors. So you need to get to know.
I would definitely say is defiant in there, because I could I could definitely say that was one of the traits that I had, was that don't tell me I can't, even if it's going to hurt me. I am going to prove that I can do it, and I'm going to charge ahead. And it's a destructive trait.
Yes, but it has good quality. So you have to be with her about that and say, yeah, honey, that's nice about you, but don't drive us all crazy or whatever, work with her on that.
Well, I channel her differently now, because now she's my drive. I get an idea.
Right.
And it's like, I'm just going to do this. People ask me, how did I start a podcast? I don't know. It looked interesting, so I bought a mic. I just did it. Why are you writing a book? I don't know. I thought I had a good idea. I'm just doing it. So for me, that's how I've kind of channeled it, is that once you sort of become aware of it and you nurture it and you heal it,
right,
then you just learn how to sort of pivot in a new direction and actually make it work to your benefit.
Yes. I actually have a client that was coming from severe addictions, like severe. And his defensive was all about numbing in all ways possible. And as we worked through some of the healing and all of that stuff, his emotional was very creative. He became a clown and a comedian, and he has in New York, he has a company that does that. And he realized that his defensive slowly shifted as we worked on it into a major computer gig. We didn't expect that at all. So now he is the manager of the marketing on the computer and all of that, supporting the emotional and the expanded that way. That was absolutely surprising. So there's some good things there.
There is. And for me personally, I think, one of the greatest gifts that has come out of all of this so far is what you were talking about earlier, is when that expanded self starts to elevate more into that spiritual self.
Right.
And you start sort of tapping more into those energies and vibrations.
Yes.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Once you start getting into that arena.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that arena is there in your expanded self.
It's always there. You just have to open that door.
You just have to tap into. The thing is that a lot of people, like yogis, that meditators, like some of my close friends, they put all their energy in taking their expanded self and driving it up and up and up and up. But their two other aspects are not being taken care of, because they call them lower selves. That's not.
I see it more as a dance. You're always dancing with all three of them. You're always moving them around.
You have to, right. But when you call them lower selves and you kind of lock them in the cellar and go, they're yucky part of me. One is the ego and one is too emotional. I don't want to deal with them. I'm going to own myself into enlightenment. No, you're not going to.
Well, you can't deny part of who you are.
Right,
It's always there, whether you like it or not.
right,
It's going to find its way up.
right. Exactly, exactly.
Now, Nomi, as we wrap up today, do you have any final words of wisdom that you'd like to share with our listeners?
Become aware of these parts of you and take responsibility from your expanded self to heal and support and nurture all of your team, so that you can become this flame of enlightenment and that you're healed, that you're, open, that you're more creative and expressive and all of that. I say, do the work.
Beautiful. I love the way that you rounded that all out together. To connect with Nomi, make sure you check out the show notes. I will have all of the links in there. And my goal for the roller coaster of midlife is to empower women like you to thrive in this amazing chapter of our lives. So go on, embrace the adventure, and start rocking midlife like the badass that you are. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a friend, because our greatest power is in our community. Don't forget to visit my website, therollercoasterpodcast.com, and click on Start Here to get your free audio course, 3 steps to go from hot mess to badass and start rocking midlife. Thank you to my listeners for joining us. And Nomi, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom.
I'm happy to do that.
Until next time, keep riding the roller coaster and embracing the midlife adventure.